And happy Thanksgiving if you live in the States. If you're in Canada, it's not Thanksgiving. And here in Mexico, we don't have Thanksgiving. So let's get into today's news. I got my producer, Nat, over here.
Hello, happy Thanksgiving.
And I think we're going to start with the big pipeline deal that supposedly came in. I mean, Mark Carney's an absolute piece of shit, and I don't believe this deal is actually going down. And he's trying to play both sides off of one another, trying to make sure Alberta doesn't separate. Well, he's trying to keep the Liberal Party in check by saying, we're never going to give him that pipeline. Let's get into it.
From Mario Zelaya, breaking. Huge victory for Daniel Smith. No more emissions caps. No, we get more pipelines. BCEB gets zero veto power. Tankers on the BC coast are no longer forbidden. A monster new pipeline is coming, 1 billion barrels a day. TMX is going to be allowed to pump out another 400,000 barrels daily. Everyone in Canada should be thanking her leadership.
And yeah, I don't know if we should be thanking her leadership. She needs to separate if Mark Carney doesn't stick to this deal. He's given himself a number of exit strategies, a number of ways to put roadblocks in front of this pipeline. I don't think it's going to happen. That being said, industry is leaving Canada in absolute mass right now. And I think Carney's going to come to the realization the only way to float the economy is through his natural resources. If he wants to wait Donald Trump out, he's going to have to invest in pipelines.
This is massive and breaking news, and I honestly think Danielle Smith just scored the biggest victory in Alberta's history. Watch this. She just got the pipeline dream, which Canada has been waiting for. No production caps on Alberta energy, no net zero regulations, no BC veto. There's going to be a massive 1 million barrel per day pipeline. They're going to be expanding the TMX by 400,000 barrels a day. Oil tankers are going to be allowed on the BC coast. While there's all this misinformation that was being spread, Ebi could veto any of this. The laws actually don't allow for him to do that. I will tell you this, I've heard it from very reliable sources that the Liberal Party is pissed. They're really pissed at Mark Carney. Here's the reality of what Mark Carney's facing. He knows our auto industry is destroyed. He knows that he's not going to be negotiating any sort of good deal with Donald Trump. He knows that our way out of this looming recession that we're going to be hit with massive job losses and a decrease in GDP, is through oil and energy. That is the antithesis of what everything the Liberals stood for and everything that Canada needs at this moment. It's going to create a lot of division and a lot of chaos in the Liberal Party. Here are the rumors that are floating around of some of the Liberal MPs that are set to leave caucus. And in the background, after this announcement, I can promise you there's going to be a heck of a lot more. Shout out to Danielle Smith. They didn't think she could do it. A master negotiator. Every single person in Alberta and every single Canadian needs to be thanking her. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't be where we are today, and we would never have this deal.
Okay, and that's pretty good. And this was early on in the day. That's when I first seen the news. I grabbed that. I usually like him, but as you dig into these contracts and dig into these negotiations, I don't know if this pipeline's ever going to really materialize here. He definitely has a lot of people in the Liberal Party that are totally against any pipeline going in. He's given himself a number of exit strategies so those PMs don't leave his party. I think he's going to tell them, we're never actually going to let that pipeline happen. If he's forced into making that pipeline happen, I think he's going to line the pockets of his Brookfield buddies and the other PMs in Canada.
From gov.exe is corrupt. Mark Carney says Alberta will get a pipeline if BC approves, First Nations approves, and if it's paid for by the private sector. Why would the private sector want to take on all that risk? This is why nothing gets built in Canada. Too many roadblocks.
Yeah, and they're touting this as this big thing. I'll believe it when I see it. And I think the rest of Canada should as well. If you live in Alberta, it's time to separate. Don't believe this piece of shit when he says he's going to give you a pipeline and turn Canada around. What he wants to do is put everybody in a trap of digital ID, digital currency, and enslave the population. Pack it full of immigrants so everybody makes less money, but Canada will make more. It's all about him, his buddies, and anybody that's on his political side.
And he said, CBC, Prime Minister, are you willing to approve a pipeline even if British Columbia or affected First Nations don't agree? Would you compensate them instead?
Just to be clear, this agreement today between Alberta and the Government of Canada, it's the first step. It's an example of cooperative federalism. We're agreeing in partnership and in a spirit of trust. But what has to happen? Several things have to happen before a pipeline is built, and one of those is a private sector proponent. Secondly, it goes directly to your question, which is that there needs to be full partnership, including equity ownership, substantial economic benefits with First Nations in Alberta, First Nations in British Columbia, as well as agreement and substantial economic benefits for the people of British Columbia. So we look at this as the start of a process. We've created some of the necessary conditions for this to happen. But there's a lot more work to do, and very much in the spirit of partnership.
There aren't any private
Okay, that's pretty good. And he's going to raise carbon tax to an extreme. It's built into this contract. Yeah, there will be a lot of jobs built in this pipeline, and that's one good thing. But once that pipeline's built, I don't even know if it's worth it at this point, the way he's designed this contract. I mean, does he have any real follow through? I mean, as a prime minister, we know he doesn't have any balls. He thinks he's going to stand up to Trump, say elbows up, and then what does he do? He capitulates, and then he capitulates more. Industry is leaving Canada in absolute mass right now. All he has left is the natural resources. It's the one thing he's promised he's not going to touch. He's definitely going to have to touch it because he's getting put in his place. Okay, let's go to this next article, and I think this is with Danielle Smith and Prime Minister Carney.
From gov.exe is corrupt. Let me get this straight. Mark Carney said the push to net zero carbon will make people like him lots of money. Today with Danielle Smith, he talks about a pipeline and the world's largest carbon capture project. Every single selected official in Canada is compromised.
And we can play the clip here.
Thank you to the Prime Minister for being here today, and this is a really great day for Albertans. We have been working for some time on addressing the 9 bad laws, as I like to call them, that have been impacting our investment climate here, and I'm pleased that we've reached an agreement to substantially work on removing and revising those laws. I think what it's going to do, especially with the removal of the emissions cap on Alberta, as well as the removal of the net zero power regs, I think it's going to unleash an incredible amount of investment and allow us to work together on important nation-building projects. So this is the first step, I think, of what will be a few more steps we have to take together, but I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister has heard our concerns and responded to them.
Thank you very well. Thank you very much, Premier. And look, it's a great day for Alberta. It's a great day for Canada. And at the heart of what is a multifaceted agreement, we have more work to do going forward, but a multifaceted agreement. In effect, it creates an energy transition, all aspects of energy, but really sets the stage for an industrial transformation. At the core of the agreement, of course, is a priority to have a pipeline to Asia. That's going to make Canada stronger, more independent, more resilient, more sustainable, because the way we're going to do that is in combination with the Pathways project, which will be the largest carbon capture project in the world. It'll mean that Alberta barrels of bitumen are amongst the lowest energy intensive in the world, therefore competitive, not just...
Yeah, he's going to do this carbon capture, carbon credits. He's got all this built into line Brookfield's pockets as well as his own pockets and the other PM's pockets on the Liberal side. He's going to have to pay him off if he wants those votes. That being said, I mean, Mark Carney is a shifty little rat. He knows Alberta wants to separate. He's going to draw this plan out at every single stage until they get the Alberta vote so he can say he's cooperating with Alberta and Danielle Smith, and I don't think that's what he's doing at all. He's trying to get Danielle Smith in his pocket. After this press conference today, with her attitude, it kind of seems like he does have her in her pocket, and that doesn't need to be the case. The second he doesn't pull the trigger on any one of these promises and doesn't push this forward with extreme speed, she needs to really push for Alberta separation. And I think all along she was going to try to reunite with Canada with a shitty deal for a shitty pipeline.
For tomorrow, but for decades, as well as creating a whole new industry for Alberta and for Canada. In addition, agreements or at least intentions around nuclear power, interties with other provinces, sovereign data centers, huge opportunity, huge necessity for Alberta and for Canada. And it's all done in a spirit of cooperation, partnership, and trust. So as the Premier just referenced, some adjustments to regulations, adjustments here in terms of strengthening the tier system, methane regs, enhancing methane regs, a cooperation agreement on regulation, which will help us move forward more efficiently and effectively. And also, just on the point of cooperation, at the heart of this is cooperation and partnership with Indigenous peoples in Alberta, in British Columbia, as they're affected. Unprecedented opportunities for Indigenous ownership, partnership, economic benefits, as well as substantial economic benefits for the people of British Columbia. So this is Canada working. This is cooperative federalism.
Okay, that's good. And Alberta's going to have to continue to send back stipends to Ottawa until the east coast of Canada. And now they're going to have to send stipends to these tribes in BC and everybody else like Brookfield that wants a cut of this pipeline. It's time for Alberta to leave. We don't need to mince our words anymore. It's time to go. Especially with Carney in power, it's just an absolute no-go. It looks like he may pull off a majority government here sometime in the spring next year, especially with these dirty pipeline deals that really everything's not above board, right? Everything's not above board. He's going to want to exit this. He's going to want to delay it. He's going to want to make it not happen until Canada's on the absolute verge of financial collapse and he's forced to make the pipeline. And then he's going to line his pockets rather than rebuild Canada. Okay, and we can go into this last article, and this is kind of what's going to happen to Canada under Carney. Their energy sector is in huge trouble. They don't want to build these pipelines. He wants to pretend like he's built them. He's already gone back and forth multiple times, and now he's built in exit strategies to this contract.
From Baron Trump News, only one country was dumb enough to blow up every nuclear plant they had and then crank up coal while pretending to fight climate change, Germany. Now their electricity costs are triple what Americans pay and their manufacturing base is collapsing. Hundreds of thousands of jobs gone because their politicians can't think past the hashtag. Germany has some of the smartest engineers on earth and some of the dumbest leaders ever elected. Merkel wrecked that country and the damage is so deep they may never fully recover. Energy policy has consequences. Germany is learning that the hard way. Germany's
a cloudy country with little wind and they wanted to invest in green energy. What a bunch of idiots. And then they want to go to war with Russia, who was giving them cheap energy to sustain their manufacturing. As soon as that got cut off, all their manufacturing went bye-bye to the United States. Canada tried to do the same thing in Alberta. They might have a little bit more wind in Alberta than Germany did, but they damn sure don't got any sun. So the fact that they were trying to transition from oil to green energy, and now that they want to go back into oil because everything else is collapsing, I mean, they want to charge carbon credits and say this is clean oil. There's no such thing as clean oil.
Ach so, es ist ja.
Okay, and that's good. And that clip's a little bit older. If you don't know what happened to Germany, they decided to go full-fledged into the Green Revolution, tear down their nuclear power plants, multiple of them. Then their country had no energy, so they started firing up coal power plants. Good old coal energy for the Green Revolution. Okay, I think we're going to go into the DC shooter here. And this was some big news that broke over yesterday. But man, the details that are coming out today, this is a CIA operative that was working with the CIA at one point.
From Marianafal, DC shooter was CIA-affiliated Afghan commando tied to elite ending team. Ramanullah Lakanwal, 29, who shot two members of the West Virginia National Guard in Washington, D.C., is now confirmed to be a former member of Afghanistan's most elite U.S.-trained forces. Lakanwal wasn't just any soldier. He served in the Afghan National Army Commando Corps, an elite unit that fought shoulder to shoulder with U.S. Special Forces in some of the most brutal battles against the Taliban. Fox News reports that he was also part of the CIA-backed Kandahar Strike Force, NDS-03, a Black Ops unit that operated outside official military channels, conducting targeted endings, night raids, and covert counterterrorism missions. This force focused answer directly to the CIA handlers, not Afghan or U.S. military command. His past is now raising serious questions about vetting, resettlement, and the long-term consequences of America's covert war in Afghanistan, with source from Fox News.
Yeah, it seems like all these shooters lately are connected to the CIA in one way or another, whether it was Charlie Kirk shooter, whether it was the two Trump shooters, whether it was this guy. I mean, they all have this through line of being connected to the CIA. Some documents need to start being released, and they need to start being honest with the American public. That being said, I would be very interested in his status. I mean, if he didn't have his papers in line and he was fearing deportation. Maybe he thought these were ICE members. I know there was reports possibly coming out of that. Why did he shoot these military members, especially if he was working with the U.S. military in Afghanistan? Maybe because he was scared of being deported. JD Vance had a very interesting clip here. This was a few years ago. That's why JD Vance is looking fat here. But let's hear what Fat Boy had to say. I do like JD Vance.
From Eric Doherty, footage is resurfaced of JD Vance going off and politicians who care more about bringing 30,000 unvetted Afghan refugees into our country than getting our own people.
Hit that. Okay.
Our own people out safely after the withdrawal. In Afghanistan, 40% believe ending yourself up is acceptable.
And
I see that Senator Ben said.
JD Vance is actually a master when thinking about these situations and being able to articulate that. In the 2028 elections, he's going to be an absolute force, especially if he gets in any debates. That was what made him such a special vice presidential candidate. I do understand he has shady connections to Palantir, and he's going to have to work those things out. But he really does think these things through, and he's able to articulate himself extremely well.
I see that Senator Ben Sasse went on national TV yesterday and attacked me for suggesting we should focus on getting our own citizens out of Afghanistan rather than the Afghan refugees. And he said great countries honor their word. Of course, nobody disagrees with that. It's a ridiculous platitude. The question is not whether we honor our word. The question is who have we made promises to? Who do we owe an obligation toward? And to any leader of this country, the obvious answer should be American citizens. So let's focus first on getting them out of Afghanistan before we say another word about the Afghan refugees. Now, Senator Sasse also said that he would welcome the Afghan refugees to his neighborhood with open arms. That's very sweet of him. I'm sure a lot of liberals will say very nice things about him because he said that. But the question is not whether we help the Afghan refugees. The question is, first, how do we do it? And second, how do we do it in a way that doesn't destroy our own sovereignty? So let's have an honest question about what exists in Afghanistan. According to Pew, 40% of the people there believe that blowing yourself up, committing a suicide bombing, is an acceptable way to solve a problem. So yes, let's help the Afghans who helped us, but let's ensure that we're properly vetting them so that we don't get a bunch of people who believe they should blow themselves up at a mall because somebody looked at their wife the wrong way. That is not real leadership. Real leadership is accepting the trade-offs of the situation, putting our own citizens first, and not dealing with fake platitudes because it gets people in the media to say nice things about you.
Yeah, and he hit the mark right on there. And I don't necessarily think it's somebody looked at this guy's wife the wrong way, but I think his papers weren't in line, and he was probably fearing deportation, and he was going to lash out. He said, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out the way we do it in Afghanistan. That being said, let's go into this next article here.
From Megatron, after speaking with China's President Xi, President Trump called Japan's prime minister and advised her not to provoke China over Taiwan, per the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, and very interesting coming up. We knew this phone call was coming up. I talked about it on yesterday's show and possibly even the day before that. But Xi seems to have Trump in line, at least in his region, with the U.S. kind of overstepping its boundaries and going into Venezuela and possibly Mexico, going after the cartels. Xi is thinking this is the perfect time to go after Taiwan, or to at least assert his dominance within that region. Everybody in that region is kind of stepping up, but they're doing it with U.S. support. Xi's making it clear to Trump that if the U.S. supports them, he's probably talking about cutting off rare earth minerals again, and we've seen how that went last time. That being said, we also see the other third major world power, which is Russia, overstepping their boundaries in Ukraine. So it seems like in this multipolar world, whatever you take, you keep. At least that's the mentality of Xi, Putin, and Trump.
From Nick Sortor, Stephen Miller says the admin will accelerate review of Biden's 20 million illegals. If you're an illegal, you're out automatically, but everybody else who was brought here, refugee, asylum, whatever, if you add to no benefit to this country, we're going to send you out.
Yeah, and after what happened in Washington, D.C., they're going hard. They're sending troops into Chicago. They're looking for deportations. They're revoking the status of a lot of people from a lot of different countries, from Afghanistan to Venezuela to a lot of other South American countries as well. Let's get into the article.
What you heard tonight from President Trump, the breaking news here tonight, is saying that his government is going to accelerate efforts to review every person added to this country over the last 20 years, or the last 4 years, all 20 million. Now, obviously, if you're illegal, you're out automatically. But everybody else who was brought here, refugee, asylum status, whatever status, as he said, if you're not someone who loves this country, if you're not adding benefit to this country, then we're going to send you out of this country. Because it's enough already. No one else has to die. No one else has to be murdered. No one else has to be shot. No more empty seats are needed at the Thanksgiving table or the Christmas table because of what Democrats have done to this country. So tonight we heard from a commander-in-chief a historic announcement, a brave announcement, exactly what America needed to hear, Kellyanne. What you heard
Yeah, and the U.S. president is doing what all these other world leaders are kind of scared to do. The EU has put a lot of policies in place where even if you want to exit people that are undesirable from your country, the EU will stop you because of different resolutions, treaties, and laws that the EU has implemented, kind of taking away the sovereignty of other nations over there. The fact that Trump is getting down to business and actually doing it, good on him. Okay, let's get into this. And this just kind of brings another wrinkle into what's happening with this migration.
From Jim Ferguson, a little girl has lost her mother and Britain has lost its mind. A heartbreaking call today laid bare the truth politicians refuse to face. A little girl will wake up on Christmas morning without her mom. Her mother, a receptionist at in a migrant hotel, was stabbed and ended with a screwdriver by a man who had contributed nothing to this country. A working woman on a low wage, doing her job, trying to support her family, ended. And what does our government do? The UK government, it pours billions into a broken asylum system. It protects the perpetrators. It silences the victims. It tells us we're the problem for daring to speak. We have reached the point where ordinary British workers, cleaners, hotel staff, carers, receptionists are paying with their lives while political class lectures us about compassion for everyone except our own. A little girl has no mother this Christmas. That should shake the nation to its core.
Yeah, and we're seeing stories like this on a daily basis, especially on this show. The elites have made the decision. We are going to censor you, take away your freedom of speech. So if you talk about this, we will put you in jail. Piers Morgan was just on Tucker Carlson, and he was censoring himself to an extreme. He would not touch situations because they interviewed him in the UK. Tucker Carlson really challenged the British government, which good on him. He said the words that couldn't be said and said the things that couldn't be said. And he's going to be flying back to the US because the British government is absolutely fearful of Donald Trump. But if they could walk over Tucker Carlson like they do their own citizens, you best believe they would in a heartbeat. Well, let's play the clip here.
If you want to get it in perspective, there's a little girl who hasn't got a mummy for Christmas, and her mummy worked as a receptionist in that migrant hotel, and the man stabbed her to death with a screwdriver. My life is, I'm very fortunate, but actually it isn't worth it anymore. When people that are going to work and earning a low wage are being slaughtered by people who've contributed nothing, and everybody supports them in government, that's when we've lost the plot. That little girl hasn't got a mummy for Christmas. That's the lowest point this country could get to.
A devastating and important point. Andrew, have a
lot
good day.
of Europe before this most recent wave of immigration. This most recent wave, people have a problem with it because it's a completely different moral fabric and a moral base. It's a bunch of Muslims that aren't fitting into the society and aren't adapting. They're not joining their society. They're trying to take over the society. They're trying to take over the churches. They're trying to shame the government and bring in Sharia law. It's article after article, day after day. It's time for the people to stand up. Especially in the EU, especially in the UK. The first thing that people in the EU need to do is get the sovereignty of their country back from the elites that are governing them with a second tier of government called the EU or the Confederation, which they think they rule over these countries rather than their countries and their citizens ruling themselves. Let's go into another article here. And I'm telling you, it's just these stories never seem to end.
From Dapper Detective, 2 illegal aliens from Venezuela, ages 14 and 16, killed a homeless man in the Loop over the weekend in Chicago, now charged with first-degree cold-blooded murder.
Yeah, and when I originally grabbed this story, it seemed like it was 3, but now it's looking like it's 2, so I don't know if it was a misreporting in the original article, but let's play this, see what happened, and we'll kind of talk about it a little bit.
4 people are now charged in connection to a deadly stabbing in the Loop, and we've learned 3 of the accused are teenage boys. The most serious charges right now against a 14-year-old boy and 16-year-old boy. They are both charged with first-degree murder in this situation. Another 14-year-old boy is charged with armed robbery, and then there's a 23-year-old man who's now charged with damage of government property. The victim had no ID and is believed to be experiencing homelessness. He was found just before 7:30 Sunday morning near Wabash and Adams, and he died at the hospital. All 4 suspects are expected in court later today. 4 people are
Yeah,
now
and there's two solutions here. You need to throw them in jail, charge them as adults, give them life in prison, or the death sentence. The other option is send them back to where they came from, let their own country deal with them. Okay, let's go into this. And this was kind of one of the clips I was talking about. I took one of the easier clips because I did not want to get censored on our show here, but I highly recommend watching that Piers Morgan interview with Tucker because Tucker was an absolute class act.
From Thomas Sowell quotes, Tucker Carlson says, London is 36% white. That's happened in the last 40 years.
And I will say this before we watch this clip. There were some other clips I just chose not to get where Tucker was intentionally saying words that the British government don't allow people to say over there. And he was trying to get Piers Morgan to say it, saying Piers Morgan doesn't actually believe in free speech. They have him fearful, and they kind of do. Piers Morgan is always on the side of the government until after the wind shifts, and then he likes to switch sides, much like Ben Shapiro. I mean, we can look at the Jibby Jab era. We can look, they were all never Trumpers. Now they all want to have and rewrite history as it's something that it wasn't. Let's see Tucker here.
This was not a communist country, but I'm just saying Britain voluntarily joined the war. It was a war that you were not involved in, and you got in. But my question is, why did it destroy Britain? I don't understand. As the victor nation,
you didn't destroy Britain.
Well, look outside.
Look outside.
We're in the city of London.
Hang on. There's Tower Bridge. There's the Tower of London. Magnificent.
Well,
office blocks
it
here.
changed London.
Why do you look at this and see a wrecked country? I don't.
Well, I don't see an English country. So we're in the city of London now.
What do you mean there? What do you mean by that?
It's not. Well, people whose ancestors built Stonehenge are not here anymore. So the city of London is 36% white, and that's happened in the last, 40 years.
But England is about 70% white.
England.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was 99% in 1945.
Okay, so we've evolved.
But you're on the way to becoming a
Pause it
minority.
for a second. And it's not necessarily about it being all white or this or that, but it's about adopting the moral fabric as you allow immigrants in of that nation. And it's a Christian moral foundation. And they are bringing Islam in. They are bringing a lot of other things that just don't mix. And it's changing the fabric of the country. It's not what it is. I'm glad Piers Morgan thinks it's the same or it's better because he's the one living over there. But the rest of the world can see through that glass house.
Country. So no one wants to say that. I think you can get arrested for saying that here. Well, that's not white supremacy. This is the indigenous population of the country.
Well, it's a statistical fact that I think by 2100, we will be a minority white country.
2063 as of today.
Well, I've read a bit later.
But these are dynamic numbers, so they change.
Yeah, but here's my question for you. So what?
Well, let me refer to the beginning of our conversation when you said that the people who live in a country define the character of that country. And then you said, yes, all the things for which we were famous and in which we had pride, like our stoicism, our concern for others, our tidiness, the cleanest country in the world now, it's pretty filthy. All those things change when you get new people moving there. You said that. I mean, you're the racist, not me. So I'm just using the parameters that you said.
I did not say that was down to
you didn't say
white people coming to the country.
Well, that's who lived here.
I don't believe that.
No, but that's what you said.
I said there was creaking pressure on public services.
No.
From the increased
but
population.
You also maybe foolishly admitted the truth. You could get arrested for this. I know the stakes are high. But you said that when the people...
And what he said there, you can get arrested, so the stakes are high. Yeah, he challenged him throughout this interview. I highly recommend watching this thing. It was pretty good. I haven't had a chance to watch the thing from beginning to end, but I have watched lengthy segments of this. This is one of the... easier topics they kind of talked about. There's other times Piers Morgan isn't as comfortable. And it's good to see Piers Morgan on the hot seat for once.
A country change, so does the culture, which is like the most obvious. It's like when it rains out, it gets wet. That's not a controversial observation, but it's illegal here because it is true. And my only point is not against, I've already said, I like the Bangladeshis better than I like the liberal whites in your country. A lot more. They've never yelled at me. I'm not attacking them. I'm just saying the things that made Britain, England. Is there still an England? I have no idea. Those are going away because there are different people living here. And if you think that those are good things in the same way that the Swedes or the Chinese or the people in Burundi and Chad, they like their culture. It's their ancestors' culture. And now it's gone. And why can't we say that's bad?
Well, because you may think it's bad.
It's good?
I love living in a very multicultural
But you're rich. I mean,
you're
rich. You go to the white parts of London, they're exactly the same as they were when I was a child. I've been coming here for 50 years. They're exactly the same. What I'm saying is exactly the same.
Which do you think is a white part of London?
I'm not going to tell you.
Well, that's a little test for you. Which area of London do you think is white?
The one I'm staying in right now. The one where my relatives live.
Where?
I'm not going to say.
No, you don't want to say because you know that I'll immediately say, come on, there's loads of non-white people living there. By
the way, I'm not against non-whites.
There's no exclusively white area.
Okay.
There's not.
Yeah, and again, it's not about it being white or this or that. What it's about is the moral foundation of the country. And in a lot of these liberal atheist countries, as they become more liberal and atheist, they lose that moral foundation. And then they bring in immigrants that bring in the moral foundation from their country. And a lot of these countries really don't have a moral foundation, or it's very shifty, especially when you're not bringing in families, but you're bringing in military age men and flooding these countries. Absolutely. Okay, let's go into this article here.
From Charlie's Voice Rising, fresh polls show something Washington can't ignore anymore. Over 90% of Americans want voting to require proof of U.S. citizenship. That's not partisan, that's common sense.
Yeah, and I can see what's going on here. I don't know if everybody else sees, but with this, they're getting the American people on side to demand their own cage through digital ID. And come the midterms, and if they don't bring it in the midterms, they're definitely going to bring it in 2028, especially with the connections between J.D. Vance and Palantir and the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I mean, they're bringing in digital ID one way or another. The thing is, they did it a lot smarter than these other countries, because at least they're saying they're going to get rid of immigrants and unwanted people in the country for these digital IDs. They're going to get the American people to put their own cage around them here. Be very careful when accepting these digital IDs. They're coming out now on all these Apple devices, whether it's the digital passport or otherwise.
So I was updating my address for a registration for a motorcycle I own, and the first thing it says, do you want to register to vote? Are you a citizen? Yep, and you got to prove it and fill it all out. What the hell's the problem with this?
Right. Proof of citizenship to vote is something that 90% of America agrees with, Republican or Democrat. It's something that should be required. We know that the only way that Democrats can win elections is they need illegals to vote in them. And that's why they're so adamant about the intent.
Yeah, and we all want an ID to vote, but this is becoming an issue, and it's becoming a through line. First, it's going to be, we need an ID, we need an ID, we need an ID. If it was a regular ID, everybody agrees on that. The bait and switch is, oh, here, everybody's going to require an ID, but it's going to have to be a digital ID, and there's going to be all kinds of strings attached with that. That's the base they need to build everything on, whether it's a social credit score, whether it's a digital ID. I mean, I can go on and on. I do quite frequently on this show. Okay, let's finish the clip here.
Tens of millions of illegals staying in our country so that they don't want voter ID, they don't want proof of citizenship, so illegals can vote. That's how they win. They cheat to win.
So I was updating my...
Okay, and let's see the next article that I did grab here.
From Chebo's, men who refused to fight and fled Ukraine are now in Prague calling Trump a traitor for seeking peace. You can't make it up.
Yeah, and it's fine to say, it's fine for these people to want to flee because they don't go to war, because they don't agree with the war. But it seems like these people agree with the war. They said, we want more war. We don't want Trump to bring peace. Yet we're going to protest in a country where we're safe, where we're going to let our fellow countrymen fight on the front lines. And this is a bit ridiculous. They need to deport these people back to Ukraine. If they want to actually fight, then give them the chance to fight. Okay, and that's good. And the war has been shifting. The front lines are moving in one direction, and Ukraine is losing more and more of their homeland every day. They should be praying for peace and to keep what they can at this point before they lose their entire country. The EU wants to push this war. There's rumors that Zelensky is now going to flee to Israel. He's got 1 foot already out the door, and they're going to give him immunity when he does leave. Okay, let's go see what Steve Bannon has to say here now.
From Grace Strong MBI, here Bannon says, here's the plan. Russia is a devoutly Christian nation and was our true ally in World War II. They stopped the Ottoman Turks, Napoleon, the man with the mustache. Meanwhile, the feckless Western countries collapsing in front of us want us to kowtow. No, recall Kelly today.
Yeah, and Russia should be a trading partner of the U.S. It's that simple. I mean, the fact that all these neocons think it's still 1935 and Mustache Man bad and Mustache Man is now living in Russia, that's just not the case. This is a completely new country. They actually have a lot of resources and could be a good trading partner for the U.S., especially if the U.S. befriends Russia. It could pull Russia away from China, at least somewhat, because right now they are connected at the hip, and it's going to be hard to do anything against anybody.
On the CIA is outrageous. Like, here's the plan. The plan is you have a devoutly Christian nation in Russia, who was our ally. Let me remind people, they were our true ally in World War II. They lost 25 million people, soldiers, fighting the Wehrmacht. It would have taken us 10, 15 years, and who knows if we even do it with just the United Kingdom and the United States. Everybody else surrendered. The French surrendered. The Spanish were on their side, claimed neutrality. The Italians were on their side. Half of Eastern Europe was on their side. All of the Norwegians, the Swedes, all of those guys were on their side. All of them on the side of the Nazis, okay? NATO today, all the leadership didn't lift a finger except for the Poles that helped us out when and where they could. So remember, we're going against our traditional ally. Oh, by the way, the guys...
And yeah, it's not just the U.S. that needs to make Russia a partner. The U.S. has different reasons why Russia should be their partner, but the EU desperately needs cheap energy. Russia had wanted to be part of the EU for decades. The EU kind of drove them out there, all the while plotting while they moved NATO further and further east to one day invade Russia so they can uphold the EU for another 100 years. We're going to have a map of that coming up, and it goes year by year showing how NATO kept moving and moving and moving, really provoking this Ukrainian war.
Guys that stopped the Ottoman Turks, stopped Napoleon, stopped Hitler, just to name just a couple, three off the top of my head. I think I want to be in business with those guys, not these feckless, hapless, atheistic, who are being overrun by Islam. They can't sell a 30-year bond right now. You know why they can't sell a 30-year bond? They can't sell a 30-year bond because nobody knows who's going to be in charge in 30 years. And maybe the Muslims don't want to, don't want to be charged interest, so they're going to stiff you on the payment. Those countries are collapsing in front of us. They have nothing. And we're supposed to kowtow to them? No. It's ridiculous. It's time now to look, see what we see, and start taking action, action, action. Recall Kelly today. He's a tough guy. He's going on, was it Jimmy Kimmel or Colbert, one of the shows last night, talking more smack? Pete, you're Secretary of frickin' War.
That's pretty good. And it's going to be very interesting to see who Bannon backs in 2028. Will it be J.D. Vance? Will Rubio try to leapfrog J.D. Vance? And then J.D. Vance will fall back on Bannon. I think Bannon is going to be a huge asset for whoever he does back. He was the one that created the platform for Trump and elevated him into power the first time, as well as the second time that he won. The big issue is Trump has moved away from his base and become more of a corporatist. He should be fulfilling promises that he made during the campaign, especially when the midterms are this close. And this was the map that I was talking about, and we're just going to let it play. It starts in 1987, and I think it ends in 2024. But the blue is NATO, and they said not 1 inch further east. That was the agreement they originally had, and that's not what happened.
From South to go, NATO caused the war between Russia and Ukraine because they spent decades breaking promises.
Here is when we really start to go in the 2000s, when these things start turning deep blue and they're full NATO partners. And you can see they said not 1 inch further east, and they kept going and going and going and going until they were right on the border. If the same thing happened in South America with Venezuela and they just started moving up and up and up and then took over Mexico, what do you think would happen? The same thing that happened in Ukraine with Russia would happen in Mexico with the U.S. attacking Mexico if that was an equivalent situation. Okay, and this was pretty big when I seen it because Russia and Israel typically have really good relations with each other.
From global surveillance, Israeli officials issued a stark warning to Russia, stating that any assistance to Iran in developing nuclear weapons or even facilitating the sale of Iran's smuggled oil and gas would prompt direct action against Moscow.
Yeah, and why is this so interesting? Because there was another wrinkle that we talked about yesterday and possibly the day before, that there is going to be an outright alliance signed between Russia, China, and Iran, the 3 big BRICS powers that are really right next to each other. It's going to be quite the block, especially in a defensive means, because they're so close to each other strategically. They're building rail lines, pipelines to connect all these countries.
From Defense Index, U.S. President Donald Trump is weighing the use of MOABs, officially known as the GBU-43B massive ordnance air blast bombs, against the terrorist infrastructure infrastructure in Afghanistan after an Afghan national linked to the Taliban shot 2 U.S. National Guard members in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and nobody wants to see the U.S. going back into Afghanistan. We don't even want to see Trump threatening this. We want him to stay out of war. He praises himself to be the anti-war candidate. Hold to that. I really hope this Venezuela incident results in Maduro stepping down and there doesn't have to be a longer conflict. It's definitely not going to become a forever war. But even that being said, we don't want to see the U.S. throwing its weight around invading countries, because that gives an excuse to other countries like China to do the same in their region. Afghanistan, Trump is realizing now there's a lot of rare earth minerals, and there was a lot of things the U.S. could have got out of there that now China is getting from Afghanistan, because they're the ones actually controlling that region. If Trump starts dropping bombs on Afghanistan, he's going to be dropping it on mining facilities and other major industrial facilities to try to cripple China. I think it has little to do with what happened in D.C., and that's why this statement came out, because of the shooting that happened in D.C., and it was a former individual from Afghanistan. So he wants to use that as an excuse to cripple China within Afghanistan. We don't want to see it. Stay out of the wars, Trump.
From Defense Intelligence, U.S. Special Forces have launched a major ground operation against the Islamic State of the Somalia province in the Baladi Valley of Puntland. Intense fighting is underway between U.S. troops and ISSP elements across the rugged Kal Miskat mountain range. Reports indicate that around 100 U.S. Special Forces are actively engaged in this operation deep inside Puntland as they target ISSP strongholds in the mountains.
Yeah, and there was a larger ground operation that started to occur. This actually came up a couple days ago. I didn't report on it because I didn't think it was big enough to report on. We've had a ton of stories lately, but it seems to be escalating. There are a lot of issues in Africa right now, and everybody's kind of trying to fight for that region. Okay, and it's just a picture of the helicopters, but there are also ground forces going in now. I expect this to possibly escalate more. It's going to be very interesting what happens, especially within Africa. They're using this conflict between Islam and Christianity, at least Trump is, to kind of justify these things to go in. We all know the genocide that's happening in, I can't remember the country, but it's a country in Africa, and Trump was threatening to launch troops into there as well. I don't like to see a genocide happen, especially against Christians, but I also don't want to see broader wars break out. If you can do strategic strikes to kind of back off these Islamic factions in these countries. Okay, let's go into... Is it the last article we have here?
Yes, that was it.
Oh, that was the last article. Okay, thanks for everybody for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, please do so. I'll be back tomorrow with Nat.
Yes, we'll see you tomorrow.
Adios.